Good morning, third grade. TGIF, thank goodness it's Friday. I have a nonfiction read aloud for you from our Kid President series. Today we're going to read about former President John F. Kennedy. You may know of him as JFK. Before we start reading, I thought it would be important to go over some vocabulary words you might hear in the story that might jump out at you. The first one in green is slew. Slew means a lot, many, or you have plenty of something. So the sentence I wrote is, I have a slew of chores to do. So that means I have a lot of chores I have to get done. Then the next word you see is uproariously. It's actually an adverb. So it talks about the sound or the laughter from the crowd. So usually it's a really loud or intense cheer. And the sentence I decided to write was, the audience laughed uproariously at the joke. A third word you might come across in the story you'll hear me read is concede. Concede means to give up or to give in to something, or you're allowing something to happen. So here's a good sentence for you. After months of begging his parents for a new bicycle, they finally conceded. That means they gave in, they allowed that guy to get his bicycle. And the last two words here we have are triumph and reminisce. Triumph in pink means to have victory or to win. The Giants triumphed over the Bengals. We know the Giants don't win too many games, but I do think they can beat the Bengals. Sorry, Bengals. Reminisce, to think about past events, often in an enjoyable or happy way. It's nice to reminisce about my childhood. So it means it's nice to think about the things that happened in my childhood. So now I'm going to read a story to you. It's called John F. Kennedy and the Bullying Big Brother. He was the youngest man ever elected as U.S. president, but he was no kid. When he took office in 1961, John F. Kennedy had already survived a slew of childhood illnesses, fought in a war, and had written a book about courageous American leaders. But the biggest challenge faced by Jack may have been escaping from the shadow of his older brother. So his family often called him Jack as a nickname. If you bring up the eldest son is always right, Jack Kennedy's mother once explained. It's very important because the younger ones watch him. If he works at his studies and his sports until he is praised, the others will follow his example. That was certainly the rule in the Kennedy household. Oldest brother Joe got all the praise, while the next to oldest, Jack, was treated like a pale copy of the original. From the time the boys were little, their father went around telling everybody that Joe would be president of the United States. There's a picture of their father with Joe, and he says, someday you'll be president. And then over there's John. He says, hey, what about me? Eager to please his parents, Joe reveled in his role as the golden boy, but that didn't sit well with Jack. To him, Joe did not seem like a role model. He seemed like a bully. When Jack played catch, Joe wouldn't throw the ball to Jack. He'd throw it at him. When they played football, Joe liked to slam the ball hard into Jack's stomach and then laugh uproariously at his little brother when he was doubled over in pain. The brothers also staged epic wrestling matches. Joe used his superior size and strength to easily pin Jack to the canvas. You can see Joe's there and he's saying, "Rah!" And then there's the much younger Jack saying, this just doesn't seem fair. One time when the boys were playing at the beach, Jack put on Joe's bathing suit by mistake. Joe grew enraged and chased Jack into the ocean, where he tackled him and began fighting him as the waves crashed around them. A family friend had to break them up before either was seriously hurt. Hey, give me back my suit! And then there was the disastrous bike race. One day, Joe challenged his brother to cycle around the neighborhood. Each took off from the same spot, headed in opposite directions. They pedaled furiously around the block to see who could return to the starting line first. As the competitors sped towards the finish line, it looked like anybody's race. But neither brother
was willing to concede defeat. Instead of stopping, they collided head on. Joe walked away without a scratch.
Jack was not so lucky. His injuries resulted in 28 stitches.
At least I showed him I won't back down, Jack told himself. Jack took every opportunity to exact even a small measure of revenge on his rival. At dinner one night, Joe served his favorite meal of roast beef with orange meringue. As usual, the other Kennedy kids had to wait until Joe's plate had been filled before digging into their own. Seeing his chance, Jack dove across the dinner table, snatched the beef from Joe's plate, and stuffed it into his own mouth. A full-on two-fisted brawl broke out. But Jack's moments of triumphs were few and far between. Indeed, Joe's status within the family only grew. When their father was often away on business, young Joe stood in front for him as the head of the household. At dinner, he sat at the end of the table, carving knife in hand, and metered out punishments to the other children. "I'm in charge," he gleefully declared whenever Joe Sr. left town. "Sorry, Jack, no turkey for you." And the crazy thing was, Jack's younger siblings seemed to love their brother Joe. They didn't consider him a bully. Because their father was often out of town, Joe was the next best thing. He spent many hours playing catch with his younger brother Bobby or swimming with their youngest brother Teddy. He cheered on his sisters at their sporting events and taught them all how to sail. Whenever Joe returned home from school, the younger siblings would run and jump in his arms just as they did when their father had come home. And there they are, they're kind of saying, "Yay, Joe's home, we miss you." So he was taking over as the man of the house or the leader of the household when the father was away. It took a long time, but eventually Jack came to see Joe in a new light, although they never really became close. One year when Joe went away to camp, Jack briefly assumed the duties of the head of the household in his father's absence. By summer's end, Jack was begging Joe Sr. to let him go to camp with Joe next year. The responsibility of being a role model was too tough to bear. By the time that he was a young adult, Jack understood that the pressure of living up to Joe's example had taught him important lessons: how to be tough, how to compete, and how to win. He followed Joe to college and then on to law school, and then to military service. At each step along the way, Jack's achievements exceeded those of his older brother, something even his demanding parents could not fail to notice. And there's a little map there. It kind of shows he went on to college and then on to law school to study to be a lawyer and then on to the military. Sadly, in 1944, Joe was killed in action while on a dangerous bombing mission during World War II. He was only 29 years old. It then fell to Jack, the next oldest of the 9 Kennedy children, to fulfill the father's dream of becoming President of the United States. Which is exactly what happened. John F. Kennedy entered the White House on January 20th, 1961, when he was just 43 years old, making him the youngest president ever elected to office. He helped advance the U.S. space program and inspire Americans to work together to send the first man to the moon. Today, many polls still rank him as one of America's most popular presidents. As an adult, John F. Kennedy admitted that he owed a lot of his success to his big brother Joe. Yes, they fought like crazy, and at times they seemed to hate each other. But the constant competition inspired the younger Kennedy to work harder, play faster, and study longer. In a book of reminiscence about his older brother, he wrote the following: "Joe did many things well, but I have always felt that Joe achieved his greatest success as the oldest brother. Very early in life, he acquired a sense of responsibility towards his brothers and sisters, and I do not think he ever forgot it. I think that if the Kennedy children ever amount to anything, it will be due more to Joe's behavior and his constant example than to his other factors." And it says, "I learned a lot from Joe," right there. And then on the right, there's Bobby says, "Yeah, like how to break out of a headlock." I hope you enjoyed this story. And I hope you learned a little bit about John F. Kennedy and how he was an important president to our country, and how, just like you, he was a kid growing up. And I hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy your Friday, and I'll talk to you on Monday. Take care. Bye bye.